The interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. The veteran's name is Henry Floyd Booth. He was born on October 11th, 1925. He served in the United States Marine Corps during World War II on the Pacific Front. He achieved the rank of Corporal. We are recording this on December 14th, 2012. I am Daniel Mack, and I'm conducting the interview. No relation. So, Mr. Booth, would you please tell me what it was like? Where were you born and grew up?
I was born in Iowa, South Carolina, right down below Anderson. My family only lived there for a short period of time and moved back to Georgia, where they moved from to begin with. And I lived in Georgia and South Carolina off and on in my growing up days, back and forth. My dad died when I was 2 years old, and my mother married again, and when they did, they moved to Easley, South Carolina. And I lived with my grandmother. My great-grandfather and grandmother were married in their later years, believe it or not. But I lived with them until I got just about old enough to start school, so then I went to live with my mother and my stepdad. And I went to in the 5th grade at Easley. And then we moved to Anderson, and I completed the 5th grade in Anderson, and we moved to Bowman, Georgia, which is in Elbert County. And went through the 6th, 7th grade, and then we moved back to Carolina, moved up in the mountains in Walhalla, and I went to Walhalla High School through the 9th grade. Moved back to Georgia and finished my schooling in Hart County, Georgia. And that's where I was drafted from, Hart County, Georgia.
Now, you moved around a lot, and you were moving around a lot during the Great Depression. What was, what were differences in the way the places you had lived had been affected? Was there large differences between Walhalla and Georgia?
Yeah, Walhalla was a rather nice place to live up there. You had a lot of mountains around along, being a teenager. A lot of boys in there. Grew up with a bunch of them. And there were a lot of, we were just within a mile or two of the state park up there. So, we got to meet a lot of people during the summer from all over. And it was, and Walhalla was a good high school too. I would probably say better than the schools that I attended in Georgia, really. But yeah, my folks were in the textile business. My mother and my stepdad both worked in Alice Mill in Easley. He was a weaver. Of course, a weaver at that time, he made a little bit more money than the average textile worker. And but he was a fellow that couldn't settle down for some reason or other. He was always looking over the hill for someplace else. But we eventually moved, when we moved to Bowman, Georgia, we moved to a farm, which I'd never been on a farm before. He had been raised on a farm, but I didn't. So I learned to be a farmer. Didn't like it too well at the time, but it was hard work. But when we moved to the mountains, we really just did a lot of jobs. We had a garden and all that, but no farming. Then we moved back to Georgia on the farm again. And that's what I was doing when I became 18 years old and had to sign up for the draft.
Now, did you have any brothers and sisters or anybody in the family that was in the military? that you were close to?
I had my younger brother, well, the brother next to me, half brother, was in the Korean War in the Army. The brother next to him was in the Army. He wasn't in the combat or anything, but he was in the Army and reserve, for 20 years, I think. But he spent a lot of time, but prior to the Vietnam War, he spent a lot of time in Thailand. In fact, he got married in Thailand. I think they were over there spying on the Vietnamese at that time. He never. In fact, when he left, we never knew where he went. He turned in his uniform and everything and left. And we didn't hear from him for the longest, so we didn't know what he was doing. But they were operating a radio tower was what they were doing. I found out later. But that's the only one. Stepdad was in service, and my younger brother, he never got in service either.
Now, well, when you turned 18, what year was it, and what plans did you have? Did you have after becoming 18? What plans did you have?
Beg pardon?
When you turned 18, what year would that have been, and what were you planning on doing when you turned 18 as far as?
No particular plans at that time. I knew from Pearl Harbor on that if it lasted long enough, that's what I was going to have to be doing at 18, so there was no plan beyond that.
Where were you when you first heard the news about Pearl Harbor?
Walking down a dirt road above the house where we lived at that time on the farm. That was in 41. And the way I found out, the next door neighbor up the road had two sons that were older than I. And they had already been called up. Before we got into the war, they called these fellows that were eligible up for a year and a day. And, once they served, if the war hadn't started after a year, they would have been discharged. But both of those fellows were in the Army prior to the war, and one of them happened to be at home at that particular day. And I think he's the one that came down the road and told me about it. That's the best I remember.
I guess what were you thinking when you heard it? How long did it take you to realize? What did you say?
Well, we didn't really know where Pearl Harbor was or anything about the Pacific at that particular time. So, it's just foreign to us, really. But, it was a trying time because, we knew that a lot of people got killed. And, of course, we knew that a lot of us was going to have to serve. So I guess that was my main thoughts at that particular time.
And so after that, you signed up for the draft, but Marine, you don't exactly get drafted into the Marine Corps, do you?
No, you have to volunteer for it, but it's either that or being drafted into the Army at the same time, one or the other, the Navy. And so you had a choice of going in the Marines if the recruiter happened to be hanging around there and looking for somebody.
Why'd you choose the Marines?
I have no, well, in the beginning, an old neighbor of ours, which lived a couple of miles away from where we were in Bowman, he was out there at the same time. He was a married man, had 2 kids, and we were the only 2 that left Hart County at that time to go to Atlanta. And we got out there, and he just wanted to encourage me to join the Marines. He wanted to join the Marines. I didn't know what the Marines were, and not particularly. So that's how I wound up. Luther encouraged me to join the Marines with him. So we went in together and stayed together until he got wounded and sent back off of Iwo while I was still on Iwo.
Was you? What was his full name? Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
Lutheran. What was his last name? Or your neighbor?
The last time.
His last name. Luther.
Oh, Luther K.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Luther K.
Now, when you so you drove down to Atlanta to go to the recruiter's office for the Marines.
They signed us up right there in the same place that all the inductees were, the Army and whatever. There were, people there signing up everybody. So we signed up right there.
And after you put your name down that line, well, where did you go from there? How long until you trained in? Where did you go and do your training?
Well, we came back home, and I don't exactly remember how long we waited, but I know it was after Christmas, around Christmas, that we were called, to come. So we both met in Hartwell about midnight that night to catch the bus to go to Atlanta. And we got to Atlanta, we got on a train headed to New Orleans. Woke up in Pascagoula, Mississippi that morning. I thought that was the queerest name I'd ever heard in my life. But we got to New Orleans that morning, and I don't know, at that time, the train from the east and the west trains didn't connect. You had to go into New Orleans, and at that time you had to wait over all day till about 2 o'clock in the morning to catch the western train going to the California. So I got time to load the train. Luther and I were walking out through there, and Luther had been around a little bit more than I had. I was 18 years old, never been nowhere. And we met this fellow that, one of the train operators, I don't know, I guess he's a portman or whatever, he said, we had a day coach. And Luther Adams says, can't we get a ticket for a Pullman? And he said, I don't know. So let me go check and see if I had a cancellation. So he came back and said, here's your 2 tickets for a Pullman.
Pullman?
Yeah, which would mean you had a bed and your dining room and the whole thing.
Okay.
See, I didn't know the difference. It hadn't been for Luther. I'd have never. In fact, further up the train, we found out later that about 100 people up there on the day coach headed the same place we were.
Did they know you were going to the same place?
Yeah, they didn't know. We didn't know they were up there. We didn't know, but we had it made. We back there. We had porters and people waiting on us and everything. So we go to. I think we landed, hit L.A. and got on the train from L.A. to go down to San Diego. That's where I went to boot camp on the Marine base there. Now why, I don't know why, I never knew why they sent me from there instead of going to Paris Island, which was only about 3 hours away from where we lived. But we went all the way across the country to go to boot camp at San Diego. And from all the things I've heard, I'm glad that's where I went.
Care to elaborate on that? Why is
well, at least the weather was a lot better out there. It wasn't that good, but it was a lot better.
And how long did your boot camp last?
Boot camp at that time, they cut it down to 8 weeks.
So they're really trying to cram in all that training.
We did it all in 8 weeks, what they'd normally been doing in 12. So we graduated from boot camp, and I went straight up and several of us went, different people went different directions. Some of them even went to Alaska or wherever. But we went straight up the highway to Camp Pendleton, which is between San Diego and LA, which is a huge, huge place. Pendleton is, I think our barracks was 35 miles to the front gate. That's how, and the base itself is about 90 miles long. Got to Camp Pendleton. There's very few people there. There's a few barracks stuck off in the country. And I hung around in the barracks for a few days, and other people started coming in. And we found out that the 5th Division was being formed right there. There'd never been a 5th Division before. So we got, people started coming in from all directions. And a lot of them were veterans that had already been overseas, Guadalcanal, Chihuahua, Bougainville, the whole works. And they'd sent them back home, for a rest period, give them 30-day rest period. Well, instead of going back to their outfit, we put them all in the 5th Division. So we had a lot of experienced people. Practically all the NCOs and the lieutenants and all were, had combat experience. In fact, the division was made up of, the Marines had paratroopers at that time. Some of them had been overseas. Some of them were still in the States training. So they disbanded all the paratroopers because they couldn't jump them on the islands. So they put all of them in the 5th Division. They also had Carlson Raiders and another Raider outfit, which was kind of a, I guess you'd say, a preview of the SEALs. They operated off of submarines and go into these strange islands and jump off at night, run in and blow up bridges and raise cane and take off and jump back on the sub and leave. That's what they did. Wild people. Well,
I'd like to know what wild is by Marine standards.
And the problem was that the ex-paratroopers thought they were the toughest, and the Raiders thought they were the toughest. So we didn't have nothing but brawls all the time, especially when there's a beer party. But it was something to watch, just being a recruit like I was, amongst all these people that, in fact, my sergeant came out of Washington, D.C. He'd been a guard in Washington, D.C. He comes in with his shiny shoes and his tuckered uniforms and everything. He's slick. But we got them everywhere. We got them off of rifle ranges. And that's what they made the 5th Division out of. It was about 22,000 men made up of mostly veterans.
Make you feel safer?
So I was just I never really considered myself a Marine as much to all those folks.
Well, I know the Marines, they're known for their tradition. And what are some of the things that you had drilled into you at boot camp and some of the, rituals or habits that Marines have that you experienced when you were at Pendleton or in boot camp?
Well, the first thing the Marines do is they tear you down. They just make you nothing, and they build you back. They just put you as low as you can be in boot camp. And then they start building you back. It's just like they give you a uniform that don't fit, so we can make you fit the uniforms that we call it. You don't make the uniform that fits you. But a lot of tradition, a lot of things that they've been doing for hundreds of years, same training, and just the toughness and being able to put up with drill instructors that are just like the devil himself. That, you know, and you're better than that. Then you're better than the Army. You're better than the Navy. And of course, I'm sure they do the same thing. But you know, you're not an Army soldier. You're not a sailor. You're a Marine. And you know, they just ingrain that in you, and they make you believe that you can do things that that you normally wouldn't do. Well, that's kind of the way they work. It's about like Danny Ford did the other night. He talked at our meeting. He says, that's the way you do a football player when you get a recruit in. You tear him down and build him back. So, same system in the Marine Corps. Yeah. Yeah, you're nothing when you're a recruit. I mean, you don't have any freedoms whatsoever. In the 8 weeks that I was in there, they don't give you a uniform. They shave your head. They keep it shaved. You have to go, and they charge you 50 cents to shave your head. And you have to go every week or 2 weeks and have your head reshaved. And each time they let it get a little tiny longer. And if they catch you with a comb your hair, they go slick it again. But it was an experience. It was really an experience. And once you get out of boot camp, the Marines are a whole lot different from there on. It's like being out of boot camp. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, the only freedom we had in that 8 weeks is you marched to chow 3 times a day, and the food there was excellent. I mean, you wouldn't eat any better in a hotel. Food was excellent. The only problem with whatever you put on your asked for to put on your tray, you better eat it. You didn't throw it away. But the only freedom you had is when you got through eating, you got to walk back to your tent on your own. And that was the only free time you had. Every other time there was a drill instructor with you, day or night, it didn't matter where. So you had to get used to that too, because you had to get used to washing your own clothes. But yeah, it was an experience.
What was your most memorable experience with a drill sergeant or an NCO?
My drill sergeant he was a corporal. He had a fill-in there for a couple of weeks. I think he went on vacation or whatever, on leave. Compared to some of the drill instructors around our platoon, he was a pretty good fellow. I know some of the next door neighbors there, their drill instructors would be getting them up all time of night and everything else. I mean, they were just bad. But our fellow, he was pretty good. Now the fill-in, he was one mean fellow. I don't know whether you ever went through a rifle inspection or not, the way the Marines do it. You stand in here with your rifle up, and he walks up and he slaps it out of your hand and picks it, and he pretends to inspect it. This little dude, I'd already got about all I had to take from him. He comes up and grabs my rifle, and you're supposed to, have it loosely in your hand. Well, I didn't turn it loose. And he could get the maddest, but he turned absolutely red when he got mad. And he chewed me out. He said, "I'll take you out to the boondocks and whip your ass." he was. I thought it was going to explode. But our regular drill instructor. He was, you know, when we finished, he would sit down with all of us and talk to everybody, and just like everybody else. He a pretty good fella. Yeah.
You remember his name? Or
McMillan, I think, was his last name, best I remember. He was a little older than the average one, I guess you was at that time. Or seemed to be.
did you have I guess you said you were in tents, but did you have somebody that you shared a tent with the whole time? Did you share it with Lutheran, or when it came to just sharing, who were you? You weren't in barracks, you were in tents during boot camp?
We were in tent part of the time, and we were in a building at one time. We got moved out of tent over to some little prefab. And, you know, San Diego had a big aircraft factory right next to the Marine Corps base. And all of those new airplanes that left that factory went right over that little barracks and all that. Those big old bombers, you know, take off. And they were just spitting them out day and night.
Now, when you went up to from boot, you went up to Camp Pendleton, and how long did it take for the 5th Division to form and ship out?
Well, first off, we didn't spend the whole week in San Diego. We went for 2 weeks. We went up to Camp Matthews, which is up the highway toward Camp Pendleton, for rifle training. We spent 2 weeks up there, sleeping with your rifle and doing everything else you could do with your rifle. Learn how to, you know, shoot it, operate it, take it apart, put it together, and the whole works. So that was part of the rifle training right there. And then we went back to Daco and finished up and went from there to Camp Pendleton. And we trained at Camp Pendleton until the 12th day of August. That's when we boarded the ship at Dago and took off to Hawaii. We didn't know where we were going, but that's where we wound up.
When you got there, what did you think of Hawaii when you landed, considering you didn't even know you were going to be there?
No, the first land come in sight, I was on top side that morning, and I looked, and the first thing I see on the side of the mountain is Dole, which is Dole in pineapple. I said, oh hell, we didn't know, well, but we were headed to the Big Island. They had a camp there called Camp Tuala, which is named after the Battle of Tuala, where the 4th Division had trained ahead of us. And it was in the desert. People don't believe this is Hawaii, but it was a desert. Never rained, wind blew all the time. Lava dust, half knee deep in places, and not a blade of grass, nothing. And it was one miserable place. So we trained there until we went to Iwo. And we left there sometime before Christmas and went to Pearl Harbor. Spent Christmas at Pearl Harbor, and after a few days after Christmas, we took off, got aboard ship, and headed to Iwo. We didn't know where at the time.
Were you a part of a carrier group that was escorting you there, or?
Yeah, it was a convoy. The first land that we come in sight of was the Marshall Islands, which the 4th Division had taken ahead of us. The 4th wasn't as lucky as we were. They left San Diego and went straight and invaded the Marshall Islands. But we didn't. We went to Hawaii and trained a while longer. But we pulled in and docked at the Marshall, but we didn't get off. Then we went from there to Saipan, Tinian, where the B-29 bombers, flew off to bomb Japan. Stayed overnight there, made a practice beach landing. Left there and headed to Iwo. We were aboard that one ship 56 days. And of course Iwo was like another 500 miles or something from there.
What did you know about Iwo? Did you know where you were going to Iwo to begin with?
Yeah, well, once we got aboard the ship where nobody could leave and no secrets could get out, they unveiled the island to us. They had makeups of the island, and of course we'd never heard of it. We didn't know there was an Iwo Jima, but we had the battle plan, and we knew where we were going to land, what wave we were going to land on, in situations like that. But we knew there were airfields there. The Air Force had been bombing it for 90 days, daily. And so, Iwo's not a big place. It's just, like 5 square miles, I think. About long as from here to the other side of the university. Mm-hmm. So they bombed it. And 3 days before they landed, we got the report from the Air Force, and they said 3% damage.
And bombing it for how many days? 90?
We didn't understand that. But actually, we were supposed to take Iwo in 72 hours. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. And we were to leave there and go with the invasion of Okinawa, which, happened a little later. But we didn't make it. It took 30-something days to take Iwo.
What, and I was trying to pull up a map. What wave, you said you knew your wave, where you were and everything like that. Do you remember the specifics about where you were going to land and what wave you were going to be in?
Yeah, I was in the 3rd wave. We were to land on the Black Beach, next to Surbachi, the 28th Regiment was going, which was our sister regiment, was on our left. 27th Regiment was next, 26th Regiment was next, and part of the 4th Division was on above us. So our objective was, the island was pretty narrow at that point. And if I could get up and go get a map, I'll show you what it looks like.
I'll have, in a second, I'll have that from us. But you can, so you were on 3rd wave, and what was your specific objective to, what were you ordered to just move forward to this position and hold and wait for orders, or?
Well, our objective was the 3 regiments landed side by side. We were in the center. The 28th and the 27th was to go and cut the island off, go straight across the island. Mm-hmm. And when we did that, the 28th was to turn and take the mountain, Surbachi. The 27th, we were to turn and go in the other direction and take Hill 362. 26th Regiment was to take the airfield, which was to our right. So that was our objective.
You said you do have a map?
Yeah, let me go.
That would be best.
There's a bathroom right here if you need to use.
Thanks. yours. Hold it and hold it like this, and you.
Yeah. This 28th Regiment landed right here. This is the 27th, 26th. We went straight across here. The 28th turned and take the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
We turned to go take Hill 362, which, you know, that indicates the heights. Which turned out to be the Battle of the Island, really. This was...
You'd cut them off.
This was planned to be the battle, the main thing to take, but it wasn't all that hard, really. In fact, they took it in 4 days. And of course, this is the airfield. When I went across here, it's almost night. I went pretty close to where the airfield is. And we bivouacked the first night over here. And actually nothing much happened. They were raising hell back here, but we were kind of in the void there. The people were having a hell of a time on the airstrip, but we were just kind of in a good spot at the time. But once we started going this way, then things got bad. But yeah, this is the one they raised the flag on, which is like that right there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I knew one of the guys. Didn't know him real personal, but he had a cousin in my company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
While we sit down and bless out.
I'll tell you a little story
Yeah.
about this if you want to get back on camera.
Yes.
Uh,
Appreciate you showing.
Actually, we found out there was 3 airstrips on that island.
There's 3. You can go and sit back down. We were recording.
Yeah.
So you pointed just south of Hill 360. What, 362?
Mm-hmm. Well, that evening, just before night, we had been in kind of limbo once we got away from the beach, got up hillside. The only casualty we had that afternoon was our company executive officer got hit with a rifle shot. That's the only fellow we lost that day. He was just wounded. But as we were rushing across the island, we come by this marine that's standing here by what looked like a stump. And somebody ahead of me says, "Who is that?" And I said, "It's John Basilone." Well, John had a presidential unit citation. He had fought on Guadalcanal and received what did I say it was?
Presidential.
No, it's not that one.
Silver Star, Bronze Star.
No, it's higher, the
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor.
You received the Medal of Honor
The
for
Medal of
Guadalcanal.
Honor he received fighting on Guadalcanal. They brought him back to the States. And during the war, you know, they had war bond drives. So they'd use celebrities and all that to go around, you know, over the country selling war bonds. And John did that. They used him for that. But he got enough of that and he said, "I want to go back overseas." So he wound up back in the 5th Division in a machine gun company in our battalion. I didn't personally know him. I knew of him. I knew he was around, but I didn't really know him. But anyway, it kind of bugged me for years. I didn't know whether I heard the fellow right or not. But in reading the history of the thing, which I read about everything that everybody wrote, they described where he was killed, when he was killed, so it was him. It was him. He got killed the first day.
What was so he was the first casualty in your, at least in your battalion?
Mm-hmm.
Was he the first fatality in your battalion?
The first, yeah. Yeah, first one I seen, yeah. He looked like, I don't know, I'd say that it, just from glancing, you know, you're moving and you're scared and you and it's almost dark, but he just looked like maybe this was gone. The way it was crumpled up.
Now, when you're doing, have you been in constant contact? Have you been under fire this has been the second day you're doing this?
No. I haven't. The only person I've been in contact with Luther at Hartwell until he died. We always visited, and I had a good friend from Alabama, was my closest friend during, training 5th Division. He was from Alabama, but he had people living in California. He had two sisters. One lived in Hollywood and one lived in one of the little towns outside of L.A. And, we get a 3-day pass to go to L.A. That's the only way you couldn't go unless you had a 3-day pass. And Jim and I, he was Jim Walker, we go up there and blow off our money the first day, like kids, you know. And we wind up on the train and riding out to his sister's in this little town. I don't remember. Anyway, it was a little ways out. Her husband was chief of police in that little town. And they lived in an apartment, had 2 kids, and they didn't have room for us to sleep. But he'd always get on to us and say, why don't you boys come out here before you blow all your money? He says, well, you get broke before you show up. And what he would do, he'd call around. The people in California were really good for this. And find a place for us to sleep. And we spent the night with Sam Golden one night. Master Golden Mill. Really. He was living in an apartment by himself. He had been married, and I can't really say for sure, but when we showed up to his place, 2 kids arrived. Now, whether they were his kids or grandkids, I don't remember. But anyway, he only had 2 twin beds. And come bedtime, he says, told the kids that, they had an inflatable mattress there. And they get the mattress out, and he said, you boys are going to sleep in the bed. Well, we argued, We just soon slept on the floor. It wouldn't make that much difference to us. We used to sleeping on rock piles anyway. But he insisted we sleep in their bed. So that was a little experience. But the people in California were good. They really were. They loved their Marines.
You said your best friend was Kenny? Your best friend, what was his name?
Jim Walker.
Jim Walker?
He had a sister in Hollywood, and we visited her, but she wasn't at home, so that's the only time we ever went there. But the other sister, we went out to their place several times.
How did you actually become friends with Jim? Did you just end up being beside each other doing push-ups, or did you get assigned to bunk together?
You know, I don't really know, but he's one of those in the day car on the train going to California. Yeah, and there were several that were good friends, but Jim, you know, he was really the closest. Him and Luther. Luther was always a friend. But there was another kid, F.A.J. Byers, from Leeds, Alabama. We were good friends. And a little story about him, we were in the same platoon. Now, Jim and I were not in the same platoon in boot camp, but Byers was in the same platoon with me. And, you know, we did a lot of close-up drills. And we looked a lot alike, our body build and all. And we'd be drilling along and sort of say, Booth, hold your head up. Everyone on Booth, hold your head up. And all the time it's him, but it's not me. He's walking with his head down. It's drilling. But yeah, he's a good friend. He got killed too. Yeah, Jim got all shot up really bad. Jim was the first day that we were taking Hill 362. We headed off that morning. We spent the night right there close by in the woods. We called in for close air support, so the Marine flyers come in dropping bombs. We put out markers out front so they know, where we are. They come in behind you and they drop the bomb, and you see the bomb coming toward you. It's coming this way, hit the ground, bounce. So after that was over, we take off and we go out into the plains. No trees or nothing.
How tall is the grass at this point? What's it? How tall was the grass? Was it about waist height, or was it down here at your feet? Did you have?
Oh, it was just black sand, lava stuff.
So no cover whatsoever.
That time we got about middle ways out, here come the tanks, and we were doing okay. But when the tank showed up, all hell broke loose. Because, they saw the tanks, of course, they zeroed in on them. And, I don't know, at that time, tanks were a lot different from now. Especially on rough terrain like Iwo, they couldn't keep the tanks out of the bomb craters. But anyway, he comes up front, he can't see a whole lot. He don't know where to go. So somebody's got to take a telephone out of the back of that tank and walk along behind him and direct him. And that's what I was doing. And it got so bad we had to leave them. We backed into the woods and they shelled us all day long. And that's when most of my platoon got wiped out. Jim was in, as I go up the line, they stationed me on the right flank, supposed to be in contact with whoever's on the other side of it, which I never seen. As I go up the line with Lieutenant, I passed all these guys in this big bomb crater, and Jim was one of them. We both. And like I say, we were bombed all day long. And not only that, battleships sitting out here practically on the beach, firing directly into that hill. And every time one of those, I thought there were 16 shells, but reading the history a while back, I found out there were 14-inch shells. But anyway, you could see them as they went over. And when it did, it lifted you off the ground. And that's the reason I can't hear in that ear. But when all was said and done and things began to cool down, about almost dark, we go back down the line, there's nobody. They're all gone, and somebody says, I think the lieutenant told us, a shell landed right in the middle of them. And of course, I didn't know whether he killed Jim or not, but found out later that he did survive. But his whole body was full of fragments. And we kept in contact. We were having lunch one day at home after, I think, the second year I'd been home. And him and his mother drove out, passed him through. They had relatives at Bavard up here. They were going to visit, so Jim and his mother stopped and had lunch with us. And he wanted me to go with him, but I had so much work to do at that time I couldn't go. And he come by to see me, and since I went to work down here at Milligan, the operator called me pays me one morning and said, "You got a telephone call, somebody to see you up here." And I go out and we visit for a couple hours in his car. And I haven't seen or heard from him since. I don't know what happened to him. But in the meantime, he had got married and his wife had got killed in a car wreck. And that's the last I know of Jim. And of course, Luther, he was a typical Marine, which I didn't think I was, but he was.
What's a typical Marine?
He's a tough guy. And Luther came back home. Luther, well, let me go back to a little before that. In Hawaii training, Luther, I tell you, had 2 kids. Well, he got word from Red Cross that one of his little girl had got burned to death. And you probably don't know this, and most people now don't know that, but back in those days, people had washpots, black washpots. They built a fire on them out in the yard, and they boiled their clothes. That's the way they washed them. They boiled them with soap, take them out and rinse them, which was typical. You didn't have a washing machine and all that. They had a fire on the washpot, and this little girl got in and burned it there. Well, they wouldn't let him go home because, things were beginning to happen. And it was bad on me, bad. So we got aboard ship, and Luther got worse. So I think it was Jim and I'm not sure, went to the lieutenant and told him, said, he's not able to go fight. So the lieutenant said, well, I'll give him another assignment, so we'll just let him go in with the supply people, so he won't have to go to the front line. And he did. But he always, thought he was the guy to look out after me. He'd always tell me, be careful, don't do this, don't do that. So after this beating we took all day that day, just before night, the lieutenant says, you and so-and-so go back and get us some supplies, water, something to eat. The things had calmed down a lot. So I go back, and of course the first person I see is Luther. Oh, you be careful up there, you be careful up there. You don't take no chances, and all that. Well, I got wounded on the 4th day, and they sent me to a hospital ship. In fact, I got wounded when they raised the flag. That's how I got wounded.
Oh, could you,
Yeah, I was in a foxhole facing the other direction, and somebody says there's a flag up on the mountain. Well, everybody stands up to look at the flag, and while I'm standing, here comes an artillery shell over us and lands beyond us. And I'm in the process of getting back in the foxhole, facing the other way. And, you know, we wore field jackets that had a strap on the shoulder. That thing come over my shoulder and cut my strap on the shoulder, and it went in, it's still in there. Went in here and went up under the cheekbone, and it's still there. But anyway, I was bleeding like a stuck pig. So they took me back to the beach and went aboard a hospital ship. And I said, oh boy, I'll get to go to Guam or somewhere. Yeah, that's where they, you know, they take the wounded, some of them, back to the hospital. Next morning, the doctor says, we're going to send you back to shore. Says, they got up a field hospital now, so I think you'll be all right to go back. So I got sent to the field hospital. Well, the first night and the only night, like I said, the island's small, so they had the hospital and the ammunition dump fairly close together. Well, the Japanese lobbed something in that ammunition dump, and all hell broke loose. Everything started blowing up, and we in a tent, and you know, no gun, no helmet, no nothing, no protection, nothing. And the dudes are falling through the tent in with us. So the next morning, they had a hot breakfast for us outside, you know. So we go out and eat breakfast. And I thought to myself, I don't want no more of this. So I sneaked off and left. And to go find my outfit. Well, in going through the battlefield, there wasn't no problem finding anything you wanted, because it just filled with guns and gas masks and you name it, it was there. So I rearmed myself, found me a BAR, helmet, and everything else I needed. And I finally found my outfit for night. And I walked up, and the lieutenant, the first one to see me, said, what in the hell are you doing up here? I was all banded up, couldn't open my mouth, had to feed crackers in between my teeth. That thing kind of locked down on. I said, fella get killed back there. I said, I'd rather be up here. That's the way I felt. If I died, I wanted to die with my gun in my hand. So he said, well, you going back in the morning when they come back for sick bay check. And that's all I said. So the next morning I kind of hid till the sick bay check was made. And later in the day, yeah, same thing. You going back in the morning. After about the third morning, he gave up, and I finally got rid of the bandage anyway. So I stayed with him. When we left the island, there was me and him and the sergeant and one little Polite boy was all that was left of the platoon when we boarded the ship leaving. Of course, we had all kind of replacement people that come in, added. You keep replacing. In fact, another one of my best foxhole buddy was a replacement. You know, you didn't want to be in the foxhole with some people. I learned that the first night I was on the front line. There was 3 of us in you couldn't have called it a foxhole. It was a rock pile. There wasn't a hole there, but we were on the lookout up on the rise. And all heck was going both directions, artillery, mortars. And we discussed it and says, well, who's gonna take the first nap tonight? So I wound up being the first one. I happened to be RC, you know, on a tripod. It's a long automatic tripod on the end. I had it set up in that lower direction. And I lay down, pulled a poncho over me, and before I ever even thought about going to sleep, we got this hit. I started hitting hole with us, really the way it felt. So I jump up, and the first I happened to be in that direction, looking at my gun, I looked in the hole below us. There were two Marines in the hole below us, which was, you know, probably close to 100 feet, 75 feet. And the first thing I seen when I jumped up was this Japanese was standing over that foxhole with his rifle and a bayonet on it. And he was giving this guy, punching him with it. And finally the guy just in the hole reaches and gets the bayonet with both hands. And about that time I get my gun ready and I shoot. Now, I don't know whether I hit him or not, because it just fell off below that hole, you know, it just was a drop off. But anyway, he disappeared right quick. And so, you know, they beat it in your brain the whole time you're training that you don't go to sleep, you don't go to sleep. And these two guys had gone to sleep. And the Japanese had thrown a hand grenade in the hole with them. So nobody had to tell me anymore not to go to sleep. That took the place of all that training. But then the guy, anyway, things were so bad they wouldn't send the corpsman. I guess you know the Marine Corps don't have any medics. It's all Navy. Each company has a corpsman. And they wouldn't send them out because, you know, too bad. So, and normally you don't get out of holes during the night. If you do, you get shot. That's the only way you can fight the Japanese, because they're moving all night. You don't see them in the daytime that much, but they're all over the place at night. So we get vocal enough to let everybody know what's going to happen. And they said, let the guy come up and spend the rest of the night with these fellas. The other guy in the hole had got up and run. I didn't even get to see him. He was up and gone before I got up. But I heard later that they court-martialed, and I don't know that for a fact. But anyway, he comes up and spends the rest of the night with us. He's bayoneted through the leg, bayoneted in the chest, both his hands are cut.
So he actually grabbed the actual sharp part of the bayonet when he had done that.
He had to hold the bayonet just like that. You know, their bayonets are about that long. Cut his hands. That's the only way, you know, keep him from stabbing him. But anyway, I don't know what happened to him, whether he survived. I think he probably did, but I don't know, never did know. But that was my lesson, to never go to sleep. So if I wasn't in the hole with somebody at night that I didn't trust, I didn't sleep. But this guy from York, South Carolina, replacement, Chambers, last name, don't remember his first name. We didn't go by first names anyway. They pulled him off a rifle range somewhere as an instructor and put him in a replacement company. And somehow or another we met. And we hit it off. We trusted each other. And so, you know, I felt safe with him in the hole with me. So sleeping wasn't that big a problem. The biggest problem was all the noise going on all night. But a good little story about the 2 hours. We were almost to the end of the aisle, and this was getting almost wrapping up time. A lot of things were still happening, but it was mostly small stuff, you know, rifles and mortars. Nothing, no artillery, much like that. All that had been wiped out. So it just man to man mostly. Well, the procedure was on the front line, when just before night, they bring up your supplies, your food and your water, and they put it in a certain spot, and everybody comes in, not at one time, but, you know, a few at a time, and get what they need. Well, they set up the chow line not too far from Chambers and myself. We're in a big old hole, some kind of shell hole, I think. Wasn't a bomb crater, but it's way too big for 2 people. Well, it was getting almost dark. Everything was about stopped at the chow line. And we're looking, and we see this fella coming up the hill toward where the, you know, food and water had been. And one of us made the comment, well, that means he's right late, ain't it? So I'm getting almost dark. Well, we watched him anyway. He comes on by the place where the food was. And he comes on straight toward us. And we watch, and we're still not sure whether it's some rain or not. We think it is. Well, you know, they shoot flares all night when it starts getting dark. They send up flares. They drop a flare once in a while so you can see what's going on. The first flare of the night fell, and that dude stopped right at the end of my gun barrel, the old VAR, which was sitting there on the tripod, and he started yakking in Japanese. So, you know, and all I had to do was reach and touch the trigger. Didn't he? I pick up the rifle, just touch the trigger, and I got it. But anyway, a little later, here comes one from the other direction, back above and behind us, and he's moving on. Well, we get a shot at him, and he goes by us, and he goes in this low place, and we don't know whether we got him or not, so we have to make arrangements to keep it, you know, watch that spot all night long. Because there's another 2 guys across on the other side from us, on the other side of the side, sitting over there, and they on point, and we don't want to give their position away and, you know, talk to them. So we just watch. But in the meantime, we had passed a huge cave that afternoon, and passed on by it, and headquarters come nighttime, that's where they set up, right in front of that cave. Well, about, I don't know what time, way late, midnight probably. All hell broke loose back there. You never heard such cussing and shooting and hollering. And this goes on a while. Finally, they start, we're coming to the front, we're coming to the front. Don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. Because, you know, you had to let it know that you're going to be above ground. Then you got shot, period. Then you look to see who it was the next morning. So we wound up with a hole full of people. I don't remember how many was in there, but we had the hole filled up. Well, the Japanese kept coming out of that cave all night long, and they're coming right out above us, heading back, getting beyond on their line. and we shot Japanese all night long. But the funny part, we're still watching this fella here, and it's getting daylight, and I'm the one watching at the time. All of a sudden, here he jumps up. Sure enough, he ain't dead. He jumps up, and he takes off right toward them other two guys that's over here. And one of them was asleep. And the other one sees him coming, and I'm talking about just 50 feet or so. The other one sees him coming, but he's not making no effort to shoot him. He's trying to wake his buddy up. Wake up, good boy. So we had to shoot him. There were a couple of replacements too, and you wouldn't have known them. The hair and the beard. I mean, you couldn't see nothing but eyes. But we had a great big life out of that.
Were they always together with each other, or were they good friends as well? And they were just kind of those two guys.
No, they had been with the company a while. Yeah, but they were not original. Yeah, there's no telling how many replacements we had. It wouldn't be there one day and they'd be killed, or 2 days or whatever. You wouldn't even get to know them really. I always thought that being in a replacement company is not good. It's just not good. See, we got to be a family. Put it that way. We were together, we trained together, we knew each other. But when you're in a replacement company, you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know who you're going to be with. You just dropped out here with company so-and-so, don't know anybody. So, yeah, I always thought that's a bad way to be. But anyway, we had been held up at this place for about 2 days and nights. We had really got ahead of ourselves. We were getting to the point where the island curved this way, and there were still troops this way coming. And if we went any further, we were going to be in front of them, which wasn't good. So we had to kind of wait till they caught up. So we finally kicked off about the 3rd day, I think. By the way, I lost my sergeant right there too. My second squad leader. His name was Slotman. He had got killed at that very spot when we first got there. It was a little beyond where our hole was at those 2 nights. So I did something that I never had done before. I went out in there to find his body, because they hadn't, come around to pick him up. In fact, he was still on their side. He wasn't on our side. And in a bunch of bushes and all, I found him and one more. And he had a 45 pistol, which I knew about. His daddy had sent it to him, and had it in World War I, Army issue. So I took his pistol. In fact, I brought it home. Wasn't supposed to, but I kept it hid all the way. Somebody broke in the house years ago and took it and all my other guns. But anyway, we finally took off that morning, and I'm out scouting. And we knew that the machine gun nests were out there somewhere, but we didn't know where. That's another little funny there. you know, we had bazookas. And they were not very well developed. In fact, we got, I think, one of the first ones ever made back at Camp Pendleton. They didn't, they were just hit and miss. But anyway, we were still a distance from these machine guns. And Lieutenant says, send Bochek up here with a bazooka. Let him see if he can hit anything. Well, Bochek was just like me. He hadn't handled one too good. So he's hitting here and he's hitting nowhere and he's hitting nowhere, and the lieutenant says, says, that's all right, kid, just split the damn area. He couldn't hit nothing. But I got to tell you another about my lieutenant. He was a tough dude. He was a tough dude. Nobody wanted to be in his platoon. He wanted to do everything right. Well, we were on a troop carrier ship that they were going into Iwo, which means you had to climb down the rope ladder to get in the landing craft to go back to your landing. Well, going down, you got your helmet, your map, your toilet tissue, everything. That's your secretary really up there. You got off. But when you're going down that net, you can't latch the strap because you fall off and get the water break your neck. Could be. So about halfway down, I don't know, never did know, never will know. My helmet came off and I lost it. It went up tumbling into the water. And I got down, first off, as we were going down, the water was really rough. I'm getting about ready to put my foot in the boat, and I look and the boat's about 30 feet below me. You know, going like this. The ship's going one way and the boat's going the other way. But finally when I stepped off in the boat, I just knew he was going to chew my eyes out. He looked at me real solemn and says, son, it happens to the best of families sometimes. That's all he ever said. And he says, called up to sailor, says, throw this Marine a helmet down here. So I'm probably the only Marine in the whole damn division that went ashore with a blue helmet on. And I don't remember when I got rid of it, but I did. But I go ashore with a Navy helmet on. But it was so out of character for him not to chew me out. It shocked me.
What was his name, Lieutenant?
But that was a different situation, you know. That's a live or die situation going west. So I can understand why it is that way, I guess. But anyway, the day we shoved off and where I was at a while ago, I'm out front, and I run up on unexpected one machine gun nest. I just walked right on it. I mean, just there, and I look, and there it is. So I get him. I go on around. There's two more in there in the bushes somewhere. And I think I took care of them. I thought I did. Well, I was headed back. By this time, up behind the log where I just passed the first machine gun nest, the lieutenant and Chambers and a couple of the guys were laying behind the log up there watching me. Well, I come to this clump of bushes, headed back to my left, and all of a sudden them bushes started moving. And I looked, and it's a Japanese, and he's got a hand grenade in his hand, and he throws it out at me. So I hit the ground, It went off right next to me, but, you know, if you're in the right spot with a hand grenade, you're okay. You know, the blast goes this way, it don't go this way. And when it went off, I turned my BR around to get him, and my BR was jammed. I thought, found out later it was out of ammunition, but anyway, I didn't even think about having this .45 pistol, because I wasn't used to carrying it anyway. So I get up and take off back to them. And about halfway there, I stumble and fall, and Chambers gets him over my head. So that's when the Silver Star thing happened right there. And I guess the lieutenant was trying to get rid of me that day or something. He said, after all of that, he said, I need you to go on and out and see what you see out further in front of us. Which was, you know, kind of cleared, but it's rock. So I go out there, I guess, I don't know, a couple of 1,000 yards, I guess. It's a good long ways. And I come to the cliff.
You by yourself?
I'm by myself, yeah. I come to the cliff and I look down and I mean, it was a cliff. I looked down and the Japanese, I could see them running around the base of that cliff, one behind the other. I mean, they looked small, they were so far down. And I didn't even attempt to shoot at them because it was too far away. But on the way back, this dude that we've been waiting on to catch up with us, they cut loose with a rocket barrage. And I'm right in the middle of it. And there again, I didn't get hit. But that was some day that day.
That was the Silver Star.
Uh-huh.
And what about the day you got the Bronze Star?
Well, it turned out at that time we didn't get it, but later I got the Bronze Star because they finally gave everybody that was in combat a Bronze Star. Yeah. If you're overseas, you didn't get it, but if you're overseas and in combat, you got a Bronze Star. They still do that, I think. But they started that since the war.
Now,
We were up for getting the presidential unit citation for our unit, and they did. But see, when they disbanded, you had to still be in the unit to wear the citation. So I never got to wear it, really.
well, did you receive it still, or?
Yeah, the unit, our regiment did. Yeah, Harry Truman gave the presidential unit citation to the 27th Regiment.
And did you receive the medal though?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you didn't get to. I thought
No.
you might have said you didn't get
No.
a uniform.
This was at the end of the war, you know, and everything was about, things like that about coming to an end.
Now you said it took 40 days to take Iwo Jima.
That was, I don't really know exactly how many days, it was 38 or something like that, that we were there.
And it was only supposed to take 72. At any point in time, was there ever any? Did everybody really expect it to be taken that fast, or what was, I guess, about day 20 or day 15? Well, I guess what was the mindset? Was it that it's taking forever, or we're going to get this done? What was the mentality?
Yeah, it grinds on you. It grinds on you. You know, you make it today and you say, I don't know if I'll make it tomorrow or not. And you make it tomorrow and you worry about the next day. And you keep wondering, well, why in the world don't they have somebody to come relieve us? But you don't. I got one shower while I was on the way. I didn't know it at the time, but I met this fella. In fact, he lived on Danny Ford's farm out here, where Danny lived himself at one time till he went to Arkansas as coach. And when he did, Colonel blessed him, which was had something to do with ROTC and Clemson after the war, I think. Never know exactly what, but anyway, he was a retired colonel. He was on the roll, but he's in the engineer. And I met him. I went over to Danny's place to buy a bull. Danny had registered her to Gilby cattle at that time, and that's where I met Colonel. And then, of course, we got to talking and all, and he said, well, says, I put that shower up where you got a shower. He says that was one of the first things that we did, once we got water. But yeah, he was in an engineer battalion. In fact, he played football at Clemson. I think he was a guard, I'm not sure. He was from in the mountains up in Virginia, I think. Way back in the hole. He lived at the end of the road, wherever it was. But smart fellow, he really. Yeah, we got to be real good friends. But he died after Danny came back home. He had to move out, so he moved over here in Pendleton. And he didn't live too long. In fact, his wife died first, and he died sometime later. Yeah, he was a good friend. I don't know whether you know him or not. His son-in-law is a Burns. He's in the cattle section of with Clemson. Been with him a long time. Yeah.
Can't say off the top of my head.
He's one of them boys that wears a cowboy hat all the time. Good fellow too. Well, in fact, his son's over there too. His son has something to do with the cattle too. But yeah, Colonel he went in away before I did. He'd been over there a good long while. He had been on 2 or 3 other islands before Eagle.
He was Army Corps of Engineers?
No, he's Marine engineer. Yeah, they had Marine engineers. In fact, he said he lost a bulldozer off the top of that mountain. The guy driving a bulldozer over there and let it go over the side. They built a road up to that thing. They built roads all over there. Of course, Sea Beach did most of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sea Beach did most of that.
I met, there was a CB in uniform at the, it was Vietnam CB. He was in uniform the other night at the memorial. I talked to him for a while. I'll probably interview him next as well. But
yeah, Sea Beach were a Marine's best friend. You know, they were, I guess you might as well more or less civilians. They were not that much military. Specialists in, you know, construction or whatever, most of them. They got a lot more supplies than we did. They got just about anything they wanted. But they share with us. Yeah, they share with us. You know, there's an old saying that back in the old days that the Army had mules and the Navy had Marines. Well, from the Navy's point of view, you know, we're the last people to get whatever's needed. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. So we didn't, when we got to Japan, we didn't have anything. I mean, we just had the barest things to survive on. But they made that and did a lot of that on purpose. Going back from Iwo and back from Iwo back through Pearl Harbor, pulled into Pearl Harbor, We're on a big merchant marine ship, huge ship. The only one I ever got on it didn't get seasick on. But that's the one we got on at Iwo and come back to Pearl Harbor. It wasn't even set up for troops. They didn't have a galley. We got 2 meals a day. And one of those meals was sardines and crackers. And the other meal was a little cereal for breakfast. But anyway, we pulled into Pearl Harbor and just had got inside, and we had to pull to the side. And at that point, we heard that Roosevelt had died. And at the same time, here comes the burnt ship in by us, aircraft carrier, leaned about like so, with a few sailors lined up on it, but it was charred. The name was Franklin. I thought that was weird. Yeah. But they dumped us off there, and we got aboard ship later and went on back to the big island and started rearming and retraining and getting in supplies, getting in the new people, getting ready to go invade Japan. In fact, we were in the process of loading ship to go invade Japan when the war ended at Hilo. Yeah, we'd already carried some of our supplies down there, and we're getting aboard ship, ready to go. And we were in Camp Hall when they dropped the bomb, and both bombs. So we dig off to Japan fast as we can get there. In fact, we got there sometime in August, I don't remember. Maybe early September, I really don't remember. But we were the first troops on the lower island, Kyushu. We landed. They had battle plans. We know it. We knew what we were going to do if we invaded Japan. We were to go in the backside of Japan up. What is that? I think that's the China Sea up through there. It's real narrow between there and Korea. We were to go in the backside. The army was to come in from the front side, the ocean side. And we were hit Sasebo, which was a shipbuilding city. So we go ahead and just like the battle plan, we followed through. Of course, when we got going up the channel there, we almost never got through because they had it mined so bad till the minesweeper just had to work day and night to, clear it so we could get in a few feet at a time. And all the time we riding along looking at all these big guns on top of these mountains and gunning the hillsides. And we decided that we would have never made it anyway. But anyway, we go on into Sasebo, which is rusted and charred and bombed and nothing left. Practically nothing. We unload and start marching. We go through town, we don't see anybody except they got a Japanese police stationed along to show us which way to go. No civilians, period. And I was about a 5-mile walk, we come to this little camp, a beautiful place. Hadn't been bombed or nothing. It wasn't big. I think it had about enough for a battalion. It was a place where they trained the submariners. So that's where we settled in there. And my first job there was to go aboard a Japanese cruiser, which was parked up in a little cove just around the corner from the little camp. Brand new cruiser, had a hole in it about big as this room, and the side were a torpedo, I guess they hit it. But it was brand new. I think my group went aboard by 6 men, and we stayed on that. Had a gang plank out to it. And
Just
the Japanese had everything inventoried, everything tagged. And of course, we were there to, prevent people from coming aboard taking stuff. And I lived in the captain's quarters, which was mahogany and leather. The only entertainment we had was they had a rangefinder, big, huge telescope on that thing, and a turret. And we'd get up in that turret and we'd watch them Japanese all over the mountainside, working their gardens, rowing the boats up and down the bay. That's all the entertainment we had there for about a week. I think stayed on about 2 weeks. Then they moved us out, and we went up the mountain there a ways, and there were several points up there we had to guard, but they had a guardhouse at the bottom of the mountain. And the sergeant all set up there. But they sent me and 3 more men up to on top of the mountain where this big anti-aircraft gun was. And everything up there was underground except the gun. And that's the only thing that saved us, because that's when the typhoon hit. And it lasted 4 days. The wind blew. We couldn't even get above ground. It would have blown us away. And so after the 4th day, we ran out of water, ran out of food. And we did have telephone contact, field telephone. So finally the 4th day, there wasn't a road up to the thing. You had to climb the mountain to get to it, hands and knees. The 4th day, here comes some fellows with us something to eat. The wind is dying down by then. So we go back to camp, and the wind has tore up everything that we put up in that camp. I mean, it was just demolished everything. You never saw the wind blow so hard. And that's, we still had a lot of ships at Okinawa. It sunk a lot of our ships at Okinawa, the storm did. In fact, we lost more ships in that storm we did from the Japanese kamikazes. But I stayed in Japan from then until I left Japan to come home in March. Stayed in Japan in March. Stayed in Sasebo there for a while. That was the division headquarters. And finally shipped out a bunch of us to Japanese Army camp at Kurme. Huge camp. And stayed there a while. We had some interesting jobs there. I got a job one time. The Japanese had millions of Chinese in Japan as laborers. And my job there for a couple of weeks was go around with a train all over the country and pick up Chinese and haul them back to the docks, load them aboard ship and let them go home. So that was an experience. Sights you never want to see. Work to death, starve to death. The other job we did at Kurme and one of the other camps I went to, we'd go out. By this time, there's no NCOs left. they're all mustered out. So I'm a sergeant. I'm sergeant of the guard in charge of a platoon. And I'm still a corporal. But that was natural in the Marines. You always had a job higher than what you got paid for. That was life. But anyway, they just wasn't in NCOs. They'd all been overseas long enough to where they could go home. You got mustered out by the points you had. How long, whatever. And it took me till March to have enough points to be discharged.
And when did you originally land in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
What was the month you originally landed in Japan?
Let's see, I don't know. At Kermay, our main job there was we covered all the countryside. We'd go out, I'd have sergeant guard one day, off one day, and tour one day. That one day you toured, you went out all over the countryside, went in everybody's home. If they had any kind of weapons, we'd take them. We went in everything except the schoolhouses and the shrines. But the first thing we normally did was go into these little towns or villages and meet the mayor or whoever, and, politic a little bit, and then go about our business. That was real interesting, because you ran up on a lot of Japanese that spoke English. It wasn't unusual at all to go to the front door and first come start talking. A lot of them had lived in Los Angeles at one time, or Hawaii at one time. They were all over the place. But that was really interesting, just to see how the Japanese lived. And once I left Kermay, headquarters got a message from this little town, and I don't remember the name of the town really. Wasn't there too long. But he requested that troops come, and was having problems with the ex-Japanese soldiers. When the war ended, they made no attempt to get their soldiers home. They were just, wherever they lived, they were there. So they sent a company up there, and this is another little camp, and it's where they trained the kamikaze pilots. And my first morning there, we get settled in that day, and the next morning I have sergeant of the guard, which you get the flag raised and all this ceremonies. I just walked into the sergeant of guard station, and we had a PA system. Sergeant of guard, report to the front gate, report to the front gate. I go out there, and the troop, the ones that were going to raise the flag, 4 hours, and here's the Japanese kamikaze pilots trying to break in the base. They wanted to come back to the base. They wanted trucks, what they wanted. Well, we got up there and we just kick asses. And they finally leave. They finally get the message. Next day, it's about 3 days they did that. They come back
shoot at them, or did you? Were you picking up on with turrets, or?
No, we just it was fighting, hand fighting.
Hand combat, just beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Japanese
We didn't kill nobody. We just beat the heck out of them. And we still did that. They still hung around town. So we had no discipline whatsoever because everybody was waiting to go home, you know. But anyway, it got pretty bad. But we'd have a bed check every night to make sure everybody's in camp. And it got where after bed check, a bunch of us renegades would jump up, put on our clothes and stick out of camp and go downtown and fight them some more because they were all over the place down there. We had MPs, but the MPs were out of the same company. They were part of it. So after a while, they pick us up and haul us back. And they wouldn't take us in the main gate. They'd put us outside. So you have to find your way back in. But yeah, we did that. We did a whole lot of things that Marines would have never got away with any other time. But, you know, like I say, there wasn't any discipline whatsoever.
Did you have competitions about who could take as many Japanese pilots as possible, or did you have competitions you were fighting to see how many you could take? Did you try to compete with your other Marines?
Yeah, we just whatever we run up on, we just beat the heck out of them. But they'd keep coming back. It just got to be fun after a while.
You said there was other than the fighting, what about what else did you do? Did you go downtown and drink? Was there did the Japanese have bars in this town, or did Japanese have bars? Period. Then did they have any?
Iwo was no. I don't think there was any civilians there. There was no town, no village, no nothing. Everything was caves. Of course, we didn't know this. See, we didn't know this when we invaded Iwo. We didn't know that damn thing. We didn't even know till after the war was over. There was tunnels from one end of that island to the other, all the way to Mount Suribachi. But we didn't know that.
You mean the one on the map that was in the bottom left?
Yeah.
That's not.
There were people coming out of those caves way after the war ended. Several years after the war ended. But we didn't know that. All we knew is, you know, at night here they show up from somewhere. And you don't see a whole lot of them during the day. You get shot at, but you don't see them. You know, he's in a sniper trap or whatever it might be. And he might run out to the mouth of the cave and shoot at you right back in there. You don't know where it came from. But come nighttime, then that's when you have to learn to be a little brave, really. That nighttime stuff can shake you up.
What would you be thinking as the sun started to set? What would go through your head?
What would I what?
What would you be thinking as the sun started to set and you knew they were going to start coming out?
Yeah, well, it was a scary situation. Till you learn how to do it. You learn how to stay awake. You learn how to watch. And you learn that who everybody else was around you. And the code was if you walk around at night, you get shot. You stay in the hole or you get shot. So anything that moves, you shoot it. Then of course, it's 99 times out of 100, it's the Japanese. But, you know, they were known to get in the whole foxhole with you at night. It wasn't unusual. He might be stumbling along, not knowing where he's going, falling whole with you.
That ever happened to you other than the 2 times?
No, but like I say, I haven't come within that distance of me. Yeah, they were. you know, they could really get on your nerves at night, especially that first week or two, but you get used to it. You get used to it. It gets to be a challenge.
Did you mentioned you didn't have a lot of the amenities that you got, the bare necessities. What was something you missed the most, or what was something that when you got it back you enjoyed it more, like your first decent meal?
Well, yeah, good food for one thing. Yeah, the food there was not all that great. Well, just to show you how restricted everything was, like I say, I was acting sergeant of the platoon, and the supplies, you know, cigarettes, shaving cream, razor blades, shampoo, whatever. I had to keep all that in my room, and I doled it out as people needed it. And there wasn't a whole lot of it to begin with. And I kept everything like that in the room where I slept. And people really needed it, I'd give it to them, but you didn't have anything to waste. And there were two reasons for that. One is, you know, we were a long way from a supply line, you know, 6,000 miles, a long way to haul anything by ship. But see, the European War had already ended. And when the war ended in Germany, they had a big problem with people. They had a name for it. The GIs had a lot of supplies over there, you know, soap, cigarettes, all that. And they would sell it to the Germans, and the Germans would turn around and sell it for an enormous price, black market. That's what they call it, black market. They had a real serious problem in Europe with that. So they were trying to prevent that in Japan. They didn't want that to happen in Japan. So that was one reason for keeping our supplies, you know, cut down. But it wasn't unusual. We ran out of boots in Hawaii. We just practically had no boots to wear. Couldn't get a new pair to save your life. And that law with us would either pair up in just a short period of time. And this is typical Marines too. You know, you get guard duty every so often, nighttime guard. Walk around through the camp, and people did their own washing, had their clotheslines, you know, to hang their clothes out to dry. Well, when you got on guard duty, you got supplies. Whatever you found on the clothesline you needed, you took it. You'd see Marines with all kinds of names on them. It wouldn't even be their own name. That's how supplies work, you know. You just didn't have enough to go around.
Did anybody ever get in fights over people taking their stuff?
I'm sure they did, but I never did know of any. It just got to be, it was just a natural thing to do, really, after a while.
Well, you said you left Japan in March. After you were done, you left from the last camp that was with the kamikaze pilots? That was the last place you were in Japan before you...
Yeah, the last camp. I went back to Sasebo to be, you know, fitted to get aboard ship. And got aboard ship. It took 15 days to get to San Diego. We ran into a real bad storm the night before we landed in San Diego the next morning. In fact, we was in a practically brand new ship, Liberty ship, they call them. Wasn't all that well made. That thing had a crack in the bow after that storm. And that was the worst storm I got in the whole time I was in the Pacific. Yeah, we had to tie ourselves in our bed that night. That's how bad it was. You couldn't hold yourself on. It was tough. But got to San Diego, went back to Camp Pendleton. Stayed in Camp Pendleton a few days. Put us aboard a troop train, headed for Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Took a week to get up there. Troop trainer. Run a while, stop a while. You know, troop train, he don't have priority. If there's somebody else coming down the track, you have to get off to the side till he gets by. So we got to Camp Lejeune and got discharged at Camp Lejeune. Was up there 2 or 3 days, I think. That's the only time I was ever at Camp Lejeune. I don't really remember that much about it. It was kind of normal, I think, for Marines to be in charge, discharged there. Was, you know, was in a hurry to get home. And there were Marines there that had been just discharged earlier that owned cars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, you know, there's all over the place. I'll take you so and so for how so much. And that's the way a lot of them got home. Well, I think there was 3 or 4 of us hired this guy to bring us south. And we're still, you know, we're still a little bit shell shocked. And we took off down the road. And this guy, he keeps going to sleep on us, driving. So finally, we got to, I think it's Blacksburg over yonder, South Carolina. We just told him to take his car and go home. And we got off and went and got on the bus. So, like, you know, I'm feeling, well, I hate to hell to go through combat and come home and get home and the car wreck, killed in a car wreck before I get home. So
Who were you coming home with? Who were the other 2 Marines you were coming home with?
Yeah.
Well, what were their names?
Oh, no, I don't remember any of those. I don't remember any of those. No, I got on a bus and went all the way to Atlanta. I had a girlfriend in Atlanta, so I went out there. And she went out there and went to work during the war. And so I went on out there and spent 1 or 2 nights, I don't remember. But anyway, we got on the bus, came back to Hartwell. But that was the end of my trip. Another good part about my trip was I had a hound dog that a fellow gave me as a puppy. In 41, the year the war started. I took care of that dog, fed him the best I could. And his name was Red. And when I came home, I got off the bus in Bowman and I had to walk out to the house, which is about a mile, maybe less. And the first one that had met me was my dog. He hadn't seen me in over 2 years. he met me. He knew who I was after 2 years. He's a true friend. But mean, God knows he was the meanest dog you ever seen. He got mean while I was gone. Yeah, he was one mean dude. I finally gave him to a friend of mine. He kept wanting him all those years, so I finally gave him to him after I got married.
Now, you said you worked at, and so you're back, you said you worked at Milliken afterward.
Mm-hmm.
You said you worked at Milliken afterward, or did you do that job?
No, I went back home and you know, we were cotton farmers, sharecroppers, and my stepdad was in the process of planting a crop. So I just jumped right in there and planted one for myself. And I did that for 2 crops. I was drawing so much money a month from Veterans Administration. Cotton was high price, seed was high price, made the most money I've made there for 2 years. Bought tractor outfit, which was very rare in those days. Ran it 12 months out of the year. People, people farmed all over the place. And after 2 years, I had an uncle that owned us. I guess you'd call it, it's a quick stop now, I guess you'd call it, up on 29 Highway out of Austin, below Emmanuel College. He come talk me into going up there running that for him. I wasn't even through picking cotton. The weather had been so bad, so you couldn't get it all picked, so I wound up sometime in January hiring a bunch of kids to go out there and pick what was left. So I ran that place for him. Grocery store, gasoline, whatever, little contraband, whatever. That's where I met my wife. She's born and raised right down the road below there. I knew her brother and her daddy before I did her, and her mother too. But anyway, we had a bad freeze and snow there at one time, and that's where I met her. She come up there. Her dog had disappeared. She was out looking for a dog. She was a dog lover. We found out later that her dad had took the dog off and give it away. She didn't know it.
She was out there looking in the freezing snow looking for her dog.
Yeah. So you couldn't call it dating, really. I was going to night school. I was going to taking business law up at Royston. And I work all day. And my uncle would come relieve me to go to school. I'd go to school, but I'd go by and pick her up and take her to the movie. And let her go to the movie while I'm at school, and then I'd pick her up and take her back home. So that was the extent of our dating, just about it, for 6 months. Yeah, we got married. Well, she was still going to high school at that time, but she graduated before we married.
What was your wife's name?
Bennett. Willie Bennett. Everybody at our church and all that got to know her in her older age, called her Miss Willie. She was Miss Willie. She passed away up in November 2 years ago. Kidney problem. Had a lot of bad years there with all the problems. 2 or 3 surgeries. Had Crohn's disease too. Lost her colon. She put out with a long time, but it finally got the best of her. She finally just got to the point she'd started on dialysis. Been on it about 2 months, I guess, maybe 3. Twice a week. And she had a pretty bad spell here at home that night, and I had to call the doctor, and he put her in the hospital that morning. And she was, doing pretty good. They was giving her dialysis anyway. And she's going to they had 3 different doctors out there. Dr. What's three doctors out there together, kidney doctor. And she was downstairs getting dialysis when I got there that morning. And she'd already had a real bad spell. She'd almost went a day or two before then. Liz already asked him whether she had liver and will and all that stuff. But anyway, she survived that. But that morning she was down there, and I was sitting there waiting on her to bring her back. And the doctor come in, and you know, he'd been a real good friend a long time, been working on her a long time. And he said, Willie don't want to do dialysis anymore. So she just wants to die. And I said, well, if that's what you want. So he said, I'll make arrangements to get her out to hospice. So we did, we carried her out there that day. And she lived that one night, and then she died the next morning. She never did really after she came back to the room. I guess the doctor gave her something to, you know, to get her out of it, so she never did know anything. Well, that day, that night, and then the next night, and she died on a Saturday morning about 5 o'clock.
It sounds like the way you left the field hospital and decided you would want to go on your terms.
Yeah, she said that. He told her this is. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name because he's a really good doctor.
But I can tell you loved her very much, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, his group, I don't know what they got to do with this dialysis here in Pendleton, but there's one of those out there daily. You know, they just do it, twice, 2 days a week. But there's one of those out there with them every day that they're open. There's him and 2 Indian doctors together down there. They had their own, you know, practice. Of course, they worked in the hospital too.
Well,
But he said, and she got back to her and she was awake long enough to tell me that she just wanted to go ahead and die. In fact, that's the last thing she said. Married 62 years. You don't see many of those, do you?
no, you don't. My grandmother lost.
Wasn't all easy either. Yeah, wasn't all easy. We had our problems, like everybody else. But somewhere you stick it out.
Was she, I imagine as a Marine, you're stubborn. Was she stubborn like you?
Mm-hmm.
Was she
More so.
more so?
Yeah, she was her own woman. Like I tell everybody, you look around this house, you wouldn't believe it to go upstairs. Of course, we forgive her well. Me and Carol's got rid of a lot of stuff. But I tell everybody, you look in this house, and 95% of this is Willie. The other 5%'s me. Everything you see right here in this room, probably she had something to do with it, except that picture right there. I did buy that picture. But she's got stuff. She had clothes, and there's still a lot of clothes here, and we give away clothes to everybody. Goodwill, Salvation Army, Carol's carried clothes to places downtown. And Lord, she was a shopper. She was, when she got where she wasn't able to go, she was sending Carol. She said, oh, you know, you get the Sunday paper and get all the ads in it. She gonna look at the paper, so over in that corner, look at every one of them ads. And she'd see something she wants, she'd call Carol and say, how about going and get that for me? It's right funny. She's all, at one time I had the phone with, rigged up my first phone with a recording. I said, people would call, and I had programmed it to say, I'd just say, Willie's gone shopping. If you want to talk to her, you can call later. But she's kind of sneaky with it. You know, I sit here and, like I am now most of the time, and I'd hear when she come in parked and go in the garage. And I watched, I saw her go by the window with her bags. Up them steps down to that. There's a bedroom on the right down there. It's a pretty good sized bedroom. And into that bedroom. And you need to go see it now, and everybody's got something out there that's still full.
Would you ever walk through the house and see something and go, was that there yesterday?
No, I'm not one that verify things like that much. And eventually I might say something, well, that's been there for a year and you're just now noticing it. But yeah, that was her pet thing though. She dressed, well, she was known for dressing. Yeah, I mean, she just dressed, she knew how to do it. She knew what went with what. She dressed me for years. And she went to church every Sunday. Of course, I never went, but she'd come down here, she'd have on something. And I said, well, that looks nice. I don't believe I've seen that before. Oh, no, I've had this thing 2 or 3 years. And I knew she had clothes with tags still in them when she died. She loved gallop belts. Belts and belts. She'd go somewhere up for a while, but she'd always wound up with a gallop belt or belts. Yeah, the preacher that preached at funeral says, Miss Willie, you know, where she went to church, says, she really knew how to dress. She knew exactly what went with what color went with what, and what color lipstick went with that. Yes, she loved to shop. And I'm right the opposite. That's just like Carol told me today. That's my daughter-in-law, that was my son. My only family, other than half-brothers and sisters.
Both your
One
kids?
half-brother and 2 half-sisters. Yeah, David, my son, he worked at Michelin. About close to 40 years, I think. He retired last, well, he retired a year ago this month. But his health is not bad, not good. He's, one thing is bipolar. He has migraine headaches, terrible, off and on, just about all the time. He's got some kind of bone disease. Takes all kind of medication. The only way he could work at Michelin, taking what he had, the doctor had like, let Michelin know, you know, that it was legal, what he was giving him. He's just getting over a bad spell now. He's fine for a while. He's bipolar. Yeah, he can come up here when he feels good and he can do more work now than I can do all day. I just had it's been almost a month now. I had a 100-foot white pine tree out in the backyard. And that thing got to leaning, and one of those stormy nights we had and the wind blowing, that thing fell and hit the house. I got the back corner of my garage there. Well, we sawed that thing all to pieces, sawed it into blocks. He split it by hand. I could have never done that. 8-pound go devil splitting wood, and it wasn't easy. That old thing had knots in it and everything else. But yeah, he had a pile of wood.
I think you've done enough work
Yeah.
in one more your lifetime than most people would do in 10.
Yeah.
So
He likes to work with wood. I don't know what it is about that. I told him I got a friend lived out the road, Earl Long. Earl sells wood. I've given tons and tons of wood off my place here. I got trees that you wouldn't believe. 40-something acres, and half of it's trees. So Earl, he cuts wood practically year round. He sells wood to people. And I told Dave one day, I says, damn, the way you like to do wood, I think you must be Earl Long's son instead of mine. I told Carol that. She got a big kick out of it. She laughed at it. Like, she's a jolly gal. She helps me a lot. She's been cleaning the house all day when we got here. She comes up every Friday and cleans the house and takes care of my business, writes my checks, takes care of my bill. And Dave, normally, he takes care of what heavy work I need done.
I think you've earned a bit of taking care of.
Yeah, he don't have much to do with the cow. Well, he feed the cows during the winter if he has to, but I usually do that. We got a donkey here. He's not mine. I keep it for a friend of mine. The little miniature kind. He's only about that high. Now Dave thinks the world of that donkey. He's always picking on that donkey. His name's Fred. He's rested. He's a real rested dude. In fact, the fellow that owns him used to raise them and sell them for big prices. In fact, he come got Fred, not this past summer, but summer before, and bred a whole bunch of his little mares with him and brought him back. But he's gone a different direction now. I think he got out of business. I think Fred's the only one he's got left. But he's been here about 2 or 3 years.
Do you have is all your medals in your safety deposit box?
Yeah.
Well,
I think the bronze is up there. I'll go get it if you want to see it.
I'd love to. If you
Well,
would.
why don't we walk up there and let you see her bedroom?